If there's one thing we've all gotten used to in modernity, it's being disappointed by entertainment. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. Quick reminder, once again, the 20% off sale on my tea website, which is linked in the description box, will be ending in a couple days. That discount is automatically applied at checkout, so no code needed, and it applies to my winter flavors that are left over, so my bourbon barrel chai and my apple cider. I have very, very few apple cider left, just to let you all know. It also applies to lemon ginseng as well as my summer flavors, so root beer, mango black, white peach, and strawberry lemonade oolong. I will link it in the description box. Okay, back to the video. Now, children, if you read the title of this video and thought, here comes Sydney to stomp on all my dreams, I just want to be super clear about the fact that I will be doing no stomping. But I will be doing some reality checking, and I'm sorry if that makes you cry. Now, regrettably, all of us know that many games that have come down the pipeline over the last number of years have sucked for one reason or another. But those that have sucked the absolute most all have seemingly followed the same trajectory. They began with a great idea or a great addition to a franchise, and then they regrettably were injected with a bunch of random progressivism that makes no sense, that nobody asked for, and is deeply unpleasant. You just know that this is a self-insert. Like some writer was like, you know what? I want to breathe fire. Seems a little bit like gaming studios have taken a leaf out of Hollywood's book, listening to the most radical in the writer's room and pissing off your entire fan base. Beautiful work. But when it comes to GTA 6 or Grand Theft Auto 6, for those of you who live in a pineapple under the sea, there is so much trepidation about what this game will be or won't be, given it is probably one of the most anticipated AAA games of the last decade. I mean, waiting for this game to drop is so ingrained in internet culture that jokes about getting something unexpected before GTA 6 are made all of the time. We got trans furry members of Congress before we got GTA 6. And it's not super surprising that this is the case. The jokes, not the trans furry congressmen. GTA 6's predecessors have done exceptionally well, and they're very influential on a cultural level. And Rockstar Games have now spent years working on this newest game, costing them anywhere between $1 billion to $2 billion. Billion. With a B. So it's safe to say that a lot is riding on its reception being good and people enjoying it. But now that the game's release has been pushed back over and over again, people are starting to wonder why. Well, they've been wondering why for a little while, but you know what I mean. And like so many of you, I think this is because Rockstar filled this game with progressive nonsense that they're now trying to rapidly, frantically backtrack. And it's not really hard to arrive at this conclusion considering that the game's development kicked off in earnest around 2018/2019 during the peak and stranglehold period of the woke cultural movement. And since then, we know that the company has tangoed with DEI training, sensitivity mandates, trans sensitivity mandates, asked for toned down minority jokes, and edited out offensive parts of their games retroactively. And I think it's entirely plausible that Rockstar watched a bunch of other games get smacked down for their overt leftism and progressivism and simply didn't want to be another casualty. And thus began the rewrites and the reworks and the delays. Gamers have rejected woke titles en masse, tanking multi-$100 million projects left and right. With GTA 6's unprecedented stakes, Rockstar really can't afford to join them. Of course, Rockstar hasn't and won't confirm this because why would they, but I do think that there is enough evidence here to paint a pretty compelling picture of what is going on. So call me Picasso because I'm gonna be doing that painting. It's worth understanding that GTA 6's full production reportedly really only ramped up once Red Dead Redemption 2 was finished, which was in 2018. Now, I think this is very interesting because this is undoubtedly during the tail end of the Me Too movement and the rise of cultural zealotry, so to speak, with endless corporate DEI training and studios bending over backwards to make sure that they tick that representation box. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about.
Thanks to Tosh.
That's why we recruited her.
Actually, Tosh uses them for themselves now.
What the hell is even that?
Because games are in production for so long, and because studios don't exactly have a crystal ball to look into and determine what's going to happen in the future, I have to imagine that they are taking cues about what is relevant and culturally interesting based on what is happening around them. Which, like, yeah, of course, Sydney, that's so obvious. And at the time that this game went into production, being woke was cool and hip, and absolutely not something associated with weirdos on TikTok who have 9,000 facial piercings and blue hair. At the time too, wokeness hadn't really hit the gaming world in the same way that it has now, but it was pretty clear that a lot of those games were already in production and would torture us in the next couple years. But you wanna know what I wish was in production at the time due to how completely awesome and useful it is? Opus Clip, the sponsor of today's video, and you better watch the ad or I will cry. I have to confess something to all of you. I freaking hate making short form videos. It's time consuming, I hate things being in portrait mode. But here's the problem. People seem to like watching short videos, and social media platforms seem to prioritize them. So this reality has been very disappointing for me. But just when I thought that all hope was lost and I probably would have to spend hours upon hours upon hours editing short form content for social media, a company reached out to me called Opus Clip, and they said they wanted to sponsor the channel. And then I used Opus Clip and completely fell in love with it and have now forced all my friends to use it. Opus Clip has legitimately, hand on heart, been a complete game changer for somebody like me because their platform is more or less a one-stop shop for creators. And like I told you all last time, I liked this product so much that I went ahead and paid for it to support them even though they offered to give me a free trial. Because of Opus Clip, and I have exclusively used them to do this, I have gone ahead and been able to create a Sydney Watson Clips channel here on YouTube. Because Opus Clip makes shorts insanely easy to produce. I drop my long form videos into Opus Clip, I select the length of the video that I want to create, and Opus Clip uses its AI to cut my clips, resize them to portrait mode, caption them, and then gives me ratings on each to show which have the best video hooks, which are the clearest, and which could go viral. I am not exaggerating when I say that the Opus Clip team have basically thought of everything that you could really possibly do to your videos to make this experience as easy and as idiot-proof as possible. But I also love that they have this scheduling option, which again is incredibly easy to use and just cuts out so much time and noodling around trying to get videos posted. So if you two are finally ready to try out one of the coolest pieces of AI software that I've ever used, and one of the most useful pieces of AI that I've ever used, then click the link in the description to enjoy 1 week of Opus Clip for free, plus 50% off for the next 3 months. For context, in 2018, the games that got a lot of flack were Battleground 5, which was criticized for its inclusion of women in a World War II setting. The game's former executive producer, Patrick Soderlund, probably saying that wrong, told players not to buy the game if they disagreed with the creative liberties that were taken, and the player drop-off that followed was pretty significant. The other notable game was 2018's State of Decay 2, which also faced criticism around its lack of white characters and its forced diversity. And sure, complaints about these two games were there, but they likely weren't even a blip on Rockstar's radar. I had a very hard time collecting footage for you guys of this game because of my crippling fear of zombies, so I suffer for my art, what can I say? I'm actually deeply curious about what makes people want to play zombie games because they're so creepy. They're so creepy from top to bottom. What is wrong with you guys? But 2022 through 2024 really crystallized just how bad a woke game would be received, with failures happening across the board. And as time wore on, gamers were getting angrier and angrier every time a game was released that was full of progressivism that nobody asked for. It was also around 2024 that people realized outfits like Sweet Baby Inc. had played a very heavy role in wokeifying their favorite franchises. And it became clear that studios were outsourcing their inclusivity agendas to firms that would make sure they were hitting all the appropriate notes in woke culture. Be that female representation, the inclusion of LGBTQ+ initiatives and characters and storylines, having enough diverse characters, you know, typical stuff. My understanding here too is that some of these firms even participated in partial rewrites or suggesting like storylines for games and then making sure that those storylines and those plot points were carried out, which is just like, Ugh. It is not a good idea to hand your multi-million-dollar projects over to people who don't know what their gender is. 2024 especially saw games like Concord, Dustborn, and Suicide Squad getting absolutely destroyed online for their overt and annoying political messaging. Meanwhile, and I guess kind of sort of hilariously, games like Hogwarts Legacy, which was released in 2023, did exceptionally well despite intense leftist backlash because of its relationship to J.K. Rowling. Okay. It was around this time that alarm bells started to ring for people around Rockstar and the creation of GTA 6. Because no, we can never have nice things. In late 2024, Bloomberg News wrote a few sentences that amounted to little more than a footnote in a full article, but sent people absolutely spinning out. The outlet reported that GTA 6 would star 2 playable characters inspired by Bonnie and Clyde, and Rockstar had reportedly asked its writers to be less crude towards transgender people and other minorities, who it describes as common targets of throwaway gags in previous versions. Understandably, considering everything that we know about the industry and entertainment, this alarmed some people, given that the GTA franchise to date essentially roasted absolutely everyone. And the point of the games was sort of to be this irreverent satire about American life and crime in big cities. That said, this leak at the time about Rockstar's instruction to its writers wasn't terribly surprising, considering that in 2022, the company censored content in Grand Theft Auto V Expanded and Enhanced Edition. In this version of the game, they removed elements that might have seemed to target members of the Q+ community, such as caricatured NPCs and in-game signs referencing drag performers. They also edited out dialogue that was perceived as mocking these types of people too. You just know this decision was made because somebody with a septum piercing was bitching behind the scenes at Rockstar. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was probably a gaggle of them. Considering this happened in 2022, which was almost, I would say, the peak of the woke insanity, you just know that this decision was seal-clapped by a bunch of people who've never even played the game. But really, this kind of decision sort of flies in the face of what GTA is all about, which is basically being an equal opportunist as far as offending people and making jokes about people and taking stabs at people. Pun not intended. So of course, this decision raised a lot of eyebrows, and also set a weird stage for what was to come. Why was the studio choosing to protect only certain kinds of people? It might have something to do with certificates being awarded to particularly senior employees at Rockstar between 2020 and 2021. According to the outlet, That Park Place, at least 60 Rockstar employees completed a course around the time called Unconscious Bias. The Unconscious Bias certification is designed to teach participants to recognize and address unconscious prejudice that they might have. The training reportedly focuses heavily on race-based and gender dynamics. It also apparently frames biases as something that predominantly privileged groups, like white employees, need to address. Another certification obtained by Rockstar employees is one called Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. Ah, how nice. Sounds completely innocuous. Wow. Anyway, this was another thing that That Park Place writes is even more widely distributed than the former course. This course also aims to promote inclusivity by fostering awareness and respect for diversity. Combine all of this as well with the fact that a major player at the company, Dan Houser, left in 2020. For those who don't know, Houser was one of the company's co-founders alongside his brother Sam and several other notable men who I'm not going to list because that'll take too long. It was reported in late 2025 that he left due to disagreements with his brother about creative direction. 3 years later, in 2023, another key player at the company, Michael Unsworth, also left. Unsworth was a primary player behind GTA 4 and GTA 5. I mean, they all were primary players behind the GTA games, but you get what I'm saying. So essentially, you have a situation where the original writers of the GTA games are no longer at the company, as is their choice, and they have presumably been replaced by people who do inclusion certificates on LinkedIn. People leave companies all of the time for all sorts of reasons, so maybe there's nothing to this, but I can see why a lot of people find it reasonably suspect that 2 major players left the company during the production of a major game's development. Whether that had to do with the company aggressively changing direction or veering too far down the road of progressivism, we don't know, and we will probably never know, but I do think it signals that something is probably wrong. One last thing that I want to point out here is something that a YouTuber called Andy Pants Gaming pointed out in a recent video. And again, this largely refers to things that Rockstar added and changed previously in released games, if that makes sense. Andy highlights that every online update since 2020 has produced characters that are soft, weak, and politically correct. Although, you know, he says this a little bit differently to me. He does so by comparing characters from previous games who are actually flawed, but reflect people who probably would exist in real life, people that we would probably know and meet and run into. He compares these characters to the new characters in the online updates who are pathetic and poorly written. He shows us 3 primary examples, I'm really going to show you 2, and one of them comes from GTA LS Tuners, where characters actually talk about being inclusive. Oh, how nice.
Hey, that's what this place is all about. Be who you wanna be. Tuner, modder, stock car racer, obnoxious as a motherfucker. Express yourself.
Bro, in San Andreas, you were killed for being in the wrong gang. Now GTA is like, it's 2025, man, let's be inclusive.
He also highlights another character called Dax and his group, the Fooligans, which is quite honestly one of the gayest things I've ever heard in my life. Gay is in the 90s version, not the homosexual version, but that probably applies as well. Anyway, these guys were introduced in an update in 2022 or 2023. Andy describes Dax as sanitized rather than making him a real character that is actually crazy. He's more of a Seth Rogen, look how edgy I am kind of person. I am annoyed because I went and watched all of the cutscenes of this Dax character person after I watched Andy's video, and I'm just annoyed now because I can't unsee the observations that he made about this. Like, why are you this way? This is why we can't have nice things.
Show me your butthole, fellas! Freshiest Metasaurus! Freshiest Metasaurus!
Andy makes a bunch of other really good points, and I actually really liked this video, so I'm going to link it in the description box, and I think it paints a pretty good picture, or at least it makes a pretty good and compelling argument about why GTA 6 probably has horrendous writers working on it, which in turn means that the game itself is probably not going to have very good characters. But I will link it for you in the description box and you can watch it in your own time. But putting all of this together, and honestly to reiterate the primary point that Andy is making here in his video, even without the woke backdrop, so let's just take that out of the equation for a second, and the DEI certificates and the leaks about going easy on certain groups and the editing out of offensive material, and this game beginning production as progressive wokeism took hold, the bottom line is that the primary writers who brought GTA to life are all gone. And now it's unlikely that those who have replaced them know how to capture the heart and spirit of what GTA is, as demonstrated by the characters GTA has dropped in the last number of years. So, because I'm a negative Nancy, along with Andy Pants Gaming, apparently, I do think that there is a high probability that this game would be chock full of unlikable characters and side characters and missions that are probably not great, and a lot of it is probably not well written, or probably wasn't well written. So with this in mind, why do I think they decided to stop what they were doing and potentially reroute and try to rewrite some of this game? And is there any proof of that? Well, no, it's not as if somebody at Rockstar is going to come out and say, hey, we added too much pride and too many transgender people to the game who you're not allowed to kill, and who have plot armor, and now we've decided that that's antithetical to what we're all about, and we've changed it. But once again, I do think that there is a little bit of evidence that we can put together to build a picture of at least some of what's gone on here. First and foremost, like I mentioned before, 2023/2024 really signaled the downfall of woke studios that themselves didn't have time to course correct, who couldn't gaze into their own crystal balls and see just how sick of all of this we would get. Massive failures like Forspoken, Star Wars Outlaws, Dragon Age Veilguard, Assassin's Creed Shadows, and even the hate directed towards Ghost of Yotei just for casting an extremely loud progressive woman as the protagonist's voice actress, these events demonstrated that the writing was absolutely on the wall. And gamers have been very loud about what they want and don't want in games. Boobs. You guys want boobs, and I want more Daddy Kratos. But I couldn't even have that because Sweet Baby Inc. worked on God of War Ragnarok and made him a sweet, loving man that he definitely is not. Why did you ruin him? I will never forgive you. If Rockstar was paying attention to all of this, like I assume they probably were, they probably looked at their multi-billion-dollar project and thought, maybe we've made a mistake. With the massive changes in the cultural landscape unfolding, several major studios have already told us that they're pulling back from progressivism in their media, notably Disney. It's also worth remembering that GTA 6's original release was slated for autumn 2025. And interestingly, in May 2025, Take-Two, Rockstar's parent company and the actual publisher of GTA, deleted references to diversity and inclusion in its annual report to investors. It also reportedly moved from its list of employment awards that it mentions each year to accolades that refer to its support for LGBT employees. This is a very stark difference to the same report from 2024, where Take-Two leaned heavily into its emphasis on DEI within the company. But no more! Again, I know this is not a smoking gun, but it is something, and I do think that it is following a trajectory that other studios and entertainment outfits are on currently, which is that woke doesn't really sell. And people do not want to be pandered to. One of the other things that I'm absolutely certain many of you have seen at this point are the GTA trailers themselves. The second trailer, which we will discuss very soon, was actually released shortly after Take-Two's annual report, and this second trailer has a very different vibe to the first, according to a lot of people. Personally, I think they're pretty similar, but that's just me. The first trailer Rockstar released came out in December 2023, and it heavily featured the game's female protagonist, Lucia? I would say this Lucia. I don't know. I'm sorry. Like I mentioned earlier, they're going for a Bonnie and Clyde thing, which I think is pretty cool. Now, on its own, some people get mad anytime they see a female lead in any game, and I honestly think that's pretty stupid. Women don't equal woke, especially in this context, and I think having a Bonnie and Clyde situation for a game like this actually makes a lot of sense and kind of makes it dynamic. I also think that OG gamers know that a female lead isn't an issue. Some of the most beloved gaming classics include female protagonists, like Tomb Raider, Metroid, Perfect Dark, just to name a few. This also isn't new, given that Dan Houser said back in the early 2010s that he would be happy to have a female lead in the game if it ever called for it. But really, this didn't stop plenty of people speculating that GTA 6 would be woke and shitty based solely on this minute and 30 seconds. What is interesting, however, my little chickadees, is that upon releasing their second teaser trailer, Lucia doesn't even show up for the first half of it, and the trailer fixates on the game's male lead, Jason, which I can actually pronounce. That's an easy name. This might have been the plan all along, show one then the other, or as people have speculated online, maybe Rockstar saw the response and the hypersensitivity to potentially something overtly leftist and decided to take things in a different direction. Or maybe the whole thing is a giant bait and switch. Who is to say? But again, I view these trailers as a little bit of an opportunity for Rockstar to see how people are interpreting and receiving what they're putting out. And whether it's related or not, Rockstar inevitably pushed the GTA 6 release date to May 2026, and then, as we know, to November 2026, which is still not 100% in stone. And the excuse all this time is that they want to do a little bit of polishing, do a little bit of a polish. They want to make sure that the game is up to snuff, which I don't really buy. For me, though, one of the most interesting things that I think backs up this rewrite, get rid of the woke, fix the game before it blows up position is an interview given by gaming journalist Jason Schreier. Why am I so bad at names? Schreier acknowledged in an interview about a month ago that the content for the game was absolutely not finished, and he described it as not content complete. He explained that content complete can mean all sorts of things, and it is nuanced, but didn't exactly explain what he meant by this. Some people interpreted his comments to mean that Rockstar was still actively building out core missions and side missions, which, if true, is not exactly what polishing a game looks like. That sounds sounds like rewrite territory to me. But the fact is, we have actually seen even recently other content like movies and games get pushed back for rewrites. This happened recently with the 2025 Snow White and with Assassin's Creed Shadows. And I'm sure it's happened to others, but I honestly just can't think of them right now. I have done a lot of talking, so let me just summarize the bottom line here, which is that basically Rockstar have probably followed in the footsteps of a lot of other video game studios over the last number of years. I think that much is pretty obvious. But with so much writing on this game, with all the money that's gone into it and the time and the effort and the energy, and also the fact that this needs to be palatable and playable for a massive, massive portion of people, it's entirely possible that Rockstar saw the cliff that they were approaching and decided to divert rather than nosedive off of it. I do think it's also more likely than not that this game probably won't be like the GTAs of old, and it probably won't really live up to what a lot of people are hoping it is. But, you know, for the sake of those of you who are massive GTA fans and who love the other games, I do hope this is good, and I do hope it meets your expectations somewhere, somehow. I just think a lot of modern writers across the board, even when it comes to game development, are just so much more focused on the self-insertion and the diversity and all of these representation quotas rather than actually making something fun and telling a good story. So yeah, I think it's more likely than not that a huge portion of these delays are caused by the fact that this game probably needed to be rewritten quite a lot due to where we're at now culturally. It's obviously very disappointing to know that they went down the wrong path to begin with, but you can't really blame people for trying to do a course correction when they realize. So in the end, although Rockstar seems to have fallen down the same woke hole that other studios have fallen into as well, here is to hoping that they are able to successfully dig themselves out. Now on that note, and before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder, check out Opus Clip using the link in the description. I love Opus Clip. This is one of the, best pieces of software, I guess if you can call it that I have used in a very long time, and I do genuinely use them, and I genuinely made a shorts channel because of them. So if this is something that you are interested in, if you want to be better at editing and all this type of thing, absolutely check them out. Now I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? I am a little scared to read your comments on this one because you gamers are intense human beings. Are you on my side of this where you think they probably went down the woke road and then had to course correct because they knew it wasn't gonna fly? Do you think that no, they probably have been the same as always and they actually haven't gotten political at all? What do you think of the trailers? Do you think that that first trailer was very female orientated? Do you think that it was intentional, trying to signal what kind of game this is? Or do you think that it was just, hey, we're gonna show you the woman in this one and the man in the next one? What do you think of all of the leftism and the progressivism that Rockstar has participated in over the years? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think that it really means nothing and maybe we're reading too much into it? What do you make of the delays? What do you think is causing those delays? What do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you have made it this far in the video, congratulations. I always like having you along for the full ride. If you are new here and you're not subscribed already and you would like to see more of me and more of this kind of content, feel free to subscribe to the channel as well as leaving this video a like and a comment because I do read the majority of them and I like hearing your feedback. Like I always say, my wonderful little chickadee people, I hope you stay safe and well and make good choices, and I will see your beautiful little faces in the next video.